Hi, Dr. Huff. I appreciate you being here today. Wanted to ask you a few questions because you are very experienced, very knowledgeable. You've done a lot, not only with the schools in Klein, but also with your education at the state level. So thank you for being here.
Glad to be here, Natalie. Thank you for inviting me.
So for those that don't know, I'm Natalie Pilkington. I've ran for school board a couple of times, and I'm still very much involved within the district and want to be the change and the catalyst that I desire to see. So I am still working diligently in the community. And I think there's a lot of information that needs to be brought to the parents. We're always busy in life and busy raising our kids and our careers. And sometimes we don't see what's going on behind the curtain. So I'm hoping to pull back the curtain and show you guys a few things of what I've noticed and what's been brought to my attention on my journey and trying to make the school district better and more accountable and support the teachers like they need to be supported. So, along that journey, I met Dr. Pat Huff, and he's been instrumental as well to work towards the change he desires to see to make the districts better. So, not that they're failing as horribly. My kids went through Klein ISD and had a great experience, and I still have one within the district. So it's not that we're out for a witch hunt, but we definitely need to see some more accountability and be better overall because there's a lot of things that are slipping under the rug, that are getting swept under the rug and not being addressed. So I do appreciate you here, appreciate having you here, Dr. Pat Huff. So after 34 years working in Texas public schools, including time as a middle school and high school principal, where were you principal at?
Well, I got to had the honor of being a principal, a head principal in the Klein ISD, and that was at Kleb Intermediate, which is a middle school. In Klein, we call the middle schools intermediates, and then at Klein High School after that.
And then you pursued a doctoral degree at Prairie View A&M, and you researched how high stakes testing and No Child Left Behind impacted schools. What motivated you to transition from principal to researcher and then author?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do was after I retired as an interim, I became a personal trainer, and I trained different clients for about 8 years. But during that time, I got the itch to go back into the education field. And the only thing I wanted to do really, though, was teach at the college level. Didn't know what I wanted to teach, but something in the administrative field. And the university that was closest to me, that would be the most convenient, would be Prairie View A&M. They're part of the A&M system. And I'd say what they call an HBCU, a historically black college and university. So those people that don't know what that is, it would be like Texas Southern or Grambling or Kentucky State or Tennessee State. Those are all HBCUs. And so Prairie View is connected with A&M in College Station, but it's a branch that is an HBCU. So I went out there, admitted, and had a wonderful experience. I got my PhD in 2014. So with that, I delved into a policy that was somewhat mysterious to me because I lived the accountability system as a principal, and it was difficult because mandates were being required that were increasing as the years went by, and it was becoming more and more difficult to achieve the rating that we had had in previous years. And yet, really, nothing had changed. The curriculum hadn't changed, the teachers hadn't changed, but we found ourselves in a situation where it was more and more difficult to achieve. And what we had at that time were ratings like exemplary or recognized or satisfactory and or unsatisfactory if that was
So
what
the mandates are coming from the state level,
national level.
national
At
level. Okay.
the national level, right? And because Texas accepted Title I funds and other entitlements and special education funds, we were obligated to follow the national mandates. Now that has somewhat changed now, but still very much tied into the national picture, even though Some politicians would say that we're not. My contention would be, well, if we're not, then why don't we change it all? Because if we have the freedom to change, why don't we do it? And we haven't done it so far. So in my book, we're still following many of the uh, federal mandates that were required from the U.S. Department of Education, even though President Trump has disbanded the U.S. Department of Education. So anyway, it's a quagmire of
So give an example of one of the mandates that weighed heavy on you that
okay, yeah. The most critical mandate of all was that there was a built-in mechanism. I call it a failure mechanism that was built into No Child Left Behind that became the law of the land in 2002. And that mandate was that you had to meet what they called adequate yearly progress. And so what that meant has a nice little ring to it. You know, we all want to be progressing and getting better. But what that meant is that there were percentages that were attached to subgroups. Now, a subgroup or a subpopulation in a school would be your percentages of your ethnicities. You're Black, you're white, you're Hispanic, you're Asian. And then they had the social economic category. They had the English language learner category, and they had the special education category. And all of those, every year, there was a percentage that was attached to what percentage of that group passed the test, the state test, the assessment that was given. During the early days of No Child Left Behind, it was called the Texas Assessment of Knowledge and Skills, TAX. All right. So that in the tax program, you had percentages attached to each one of those subpopulations. So for example, let's take the percentage of 50%. 50%. So if the marker was at 50% for that year, then 50% of your Black students, your African Americans, had to pass the test. 50% of your white, 50% of your Hispanic, 50% of your special ed, 50% of your economically disadvantaged. You follow me? Mm-hmm. So each one of those categories had to reach the mark that AYP, adequate yearly progress, was for that particular year. Now, let's just say it just stayed at 50%. We could live with that. 50% of your population had to pass. Each one of your subgroups had to pass 50%, 50% of them, okay? Well, the problem with adequate yearly progress is that you had to progress every year. And so when I describe this to people, they can't believe it. They can't believe that somebody, some politician or some think tank would think that it was appropriate to do this. So every year the percentage would go up. And so let's say the next year it went up to 55%. And that meant that every population had to pass that marker, 55%. And then you'd work real hard. Some of your Title I schools, which were affected the most, were the ones that had the most challenges.
Explain what a Title I school is, because some people won't understand what that is.
All right. To be honest, I don't know what the percentage is now that you have to have, but it's the certain percentage that has been set for that year for the percentage of your population that is on free and reduced lunch.
So it's based on income, economic
based on
status.
Income of the family, right? So if you qualify through your family income to be on free and reduced lunch, and the population of your school hits a percentage, let's say it's 40%. 40% of your population is on free and reduced lunch, and that's what they have set as the marker to be called Title I, and that opens up federal funds for you to receive, so that you can give that amount of free and reduced lunch away and not be penalized as a school, you know, for helping that population. And so if you're Title I, it gives you the ability to receive federal funds. And it also means since you accept the money, then you have to abide by other rules that go along with accepting that money. And that's where No Child Left Behind grabbed every school district because every school district in the land has got Title I schools with it.
So he who controls the purse strings controls the districts.
Always.
So
And so, yeah. So a funny thing happened on the way to um, receiving adequate yearly progress. Those population percentages went up every year. And so the question then becomes, why were they going up? What in the world was happening? What was causing these percentages to go up every year? Well, this is where it gets crazy. And this is where you see the evil intent, truly the evil intent of the powers that be that are controlling education. Because during No Child Left Behind, it was declared in 2002 that by 2014, all students would be proficient on the assessment. So, what does all mean? All means all, 100%. And so it was declared that way back in 2002, that by 2014, all of your students will pass the test, every single one. Is that realistic? No, no, it's not. And your Title I schools, yeah, even Klein High had trouble with this as the years went by. Because as the years went by, in Klein High, for those people in the audience, we pulled from a population that was affluent for the most part. We had low income. We also had middle class, but we also had a large percentage of our population that was affluent. And with that comes fewer challenges for the family. Typically, you have two parents at home. You have college educated parents. They value their education. They're going to be able to afford tutoring if tutoring is required. And so the challenges that an affluent family faces with their child's education is not as great as the family that has challenges associated with poverty. Okay, now that you can't apply that completely across the board, but it's a good rule of thumb to go by. So your Title I schools that pull from neighborhoods of poverty are going to have more difficulty. And so you're not comparing apples to apples. It's apples to oranges. And your affluent schools are going to do well on the state test. And your schools that pull from poverty, your Title I schools, are going to have the most difficulty. And they're not going to be rated as high. So is that fair? No, it's not fair.
why did they do that? Like it doesn't make sense, even with the best intentions in this utopian world that we want to live in, that we'd ideally love to live in. We'd love every kid to be succeeding and thriving and
Right.
just doing well. But realistically, we know that there are some kids that aren't going to do as well. And some just aren't good test takers, whatever the situation. Why would they set themselves up for failure? Because it's not a realistic goal. What was the motivation behind it? What do you feel, or do you know, or have any thoughts on that?
I do have thoughts on that, as a matter of fact. Um, and I think history bears out that I'm right in my hypothesis, if you want to put it that way. From the minute No Child Left Behind began, it was set up with the intent to fail schools. That's a big statement. A lot of people can't buy into that because why would a governmental agency do that? Well, if they want to move a certain population from one point to another and have them accepted, then you have to agree that there's going to be a certain amount of nefarious um, intent involved with it. The goal was, the goal of failing all of those schools was to get the entire nation on one curriculum, all learning the same thing and the same way. And so as those percentages went went by and increased, then people began to panic. You began to see your Title I schools fail, fail, and then you began to see your affluent schools get nervous because those percentages are going up and they know that not 100% of their kids are going to pass the test. It's just not going to happen. Okay, just be realistic. And it didn't happen. So by 2010, the percentages had risen to a point, and I'm not exactly, I can't give you the exact quote on this, but it's close to it, close enough to be accurate. 70% of your subgroups would have to pass. So by that time, your Title I schools, the schools that had the most challenges, were beginning to fail in record numbers. And so we have this thing, this phenomenon going on across the country, school failure. Well,
Well,
Natalie,
you see it in North Shore and HISD, you see what they've done with that.
yeah, yeah. And so, Natalie, you didn't have school failure when you went to school.
Right.
Students failed. Schools didn't fail. Uh, if a kid didn't do his homework, if he didn't pay attention in class, if they didn't do their due diligence along the way, then the chances were, unless they were just gifted to begin with and had recall, had 100% recall, they were going to fail.
They repeated the grade.
They repeated the grade. Exactly. Okay, so now we have a situation where the tables have turned. It's now the school that fails.
It's
And
the
they
teachers. I mean, where the teachers bear all the weight. They
exactly.
really, and they stack, and then you get principals little stack classes. You get, like it goes, I won't go into all that, but it can become a bigger issue.
It certainly can. And the fact that students were not held accountable changed the game completely. Kids are kids, okay? They're not mature like adults are. Uh, some adults aren't mature. Some kids are more mature than others. But for the most part, if it's not required of a kid to get a certain grade on a test, and they know that they can take a retake and another retake and another retake, then chances are if they're of a certain type of persuasion and laziness, they're not going to put the effort into it to make it sure that they pass the first time, like it used to be. We didn't have retakes when I was in school, and you probably didn't either. Um, you had to pass it the first go round, and you had whatever grade you made, that's what you made. Well, because the teacher is held accountable and the school is held accountable for the number of failures that you have, then unlimited opportunities existed. And that's not real life. That's just not real. That's not the way it works out in the business world. Um, you have to be on point all the time. So anyway, it became a horrible situation where the school became accountable, not the student. And so let me bring us back. We got off on a tangent. Let me bring it back to what was the intent. What was the intent of No Child Left Behind? It was to deliberately drive schools to failure so that the states would agree to a different format for teaching, a different format for learning, a different platform, different set of standards, if you will. Excuse me. Now we had gone from George W. Bush to Barack Obama. Well, it's an excellent example of how the two parties work together when it comes to education. One goes into the other because it's a bigger picture. It's beyond politics. It's an agenda. It's an agenda to control information and knowledge. That'd be a great subtitle for a book. The agenda to control information and knowledge.
There you
That's
go. That's your next book.
no, that's my current book. That's my current.
Ah,
That's the subtitle of my book.
the
And so,
takeover of public education.
yeah, the we we didn't have a chance to talk about me sharing information. I don't know if you know how to let me share on Zoom, but
Yeah.
that's okay. If you'll give me the opportunity to share, then I'll show you some things. Um, the so by 2011, 2012, the percentages had reached 90%. So we've got wholesale failure taking place across the country. And they were having TV specials about it. What are we going to do? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, the whole thing was a setup. And if you think that there no way that that could be, our country, our government would not do that to us, yes, they would. And they continue to do it to us. Even in the last legislative session in Austin, they continue to do it to us.
Well, we'll get into that too. You can go ahead and share right now.
Okay.
We may end up having to make this a 2 or a 3-parter. We're only on question 1. Let's go. A
So,
lot of information, but it's all really good in how it ties into your kids. I mean, I raised my kids with love and logic, and it was hard because I would expect them to fail because I would ask them to do their homework, yell at them to do their homework, try and motivate them, and they wouldn't do their homework. And I'm like, well, they're like, if it doesn't work, if I don't get it done, it's okay. I can do it tomorrow. I'm like, what? You need to do it tonight. It's due tomorrow morning, not the next day or the next. And it
right.
was very frustrating to try and parent accountability into your kids when the schools aren't helping reinforce and there's not that community reinforcement of you need to do what's right, do what you're supposed to do your homework. So
So there's the book. And I wrote the book taken from my dissertation because I wanted to prove and I wanted to put it in a readable format that people could access, not in a dissertation form that people would get bored with, in a readable book so that people could understand and see how I proved that No Child Left Behind was written with the intent to move us in a new direction in education. And that new direction was into Common Core. So keep in mind that we've moved from Bush to Obama, and Obama's job with the U.S. Department of Education, of course, he didn't do it. People behind him did it, was to move us into the Common Core standards. And this is when math changed so radically that everybody can recognize it and that everybody can recognize the change, I mean, and the difficulty. Parents
this was
didn't.
also COVID. So this is also when kids are online, we're getting away from books, we're moving online. So parents aren't helping with sheet homework. They're helping like my child, because I have an age gap. I have a 23, a 21, a 19, graduated, great, fantastic. I have a 9-year old coming up and trying to help him with his homework
Mhm.
the way he spoke math and the way I spoke math. And I didn't know you could speak math differently. I thought it was pretty cut and dry. 4 + 4 is 8, but I was wrong. And the way he was grouping and counting, and I would message his teachers. I'm like, I am not understanding what he is trying to tell me. I've tried to Google it. I've tried to YouTube it. I've tried to find out, and we're not speaking the same language. And it was very frustrating having a child with special needs, trying to help him learn how to learn, and I can't even help my own kid with basic 2nd grade, 3rd grade math. There is a problem.
Yeah. Well, and by that time, Natalie, we had already been in Common Core for 8 years.
That's insane. No wonder why kids don't know what to do with change when they get it at the
Yeah,
fast food restaurant. So
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, taking it down to that level. So anyway, that's how we got Common Core. That's how everything changed in terms of the curriculum. So if you want to go to the next question,
so
that's
what's
what put me on that path.
one last question? What's the motivation of the government to do this? Just to control the message that's going out to the masses, to
If you
control the people.
if you want to control a population, then you have to control what they're being taught in school. And so with one generation of kids, you can completely change the makeup of how the kids think, their motivations, what they're capable of, what they believe in terms of history, what they believe about their country. Everything can change according to how you educate your students. And if the structure of the education is so set, the structure is firm, you cannot deviate because you have to get your kids ready for a certain test, then this is how you're going to control a population. That's
Okay.
the So you have to buy into the fact that our government is nefarious enough and malevolent enough to do something like that. And I believe that they are. Some people believe not. Some people believe that we change with presidents or we change with parties. And actually, we don't. The agenda continues, especially you can show that so clearly in education.
So, as a leader at Klein High School, looking back as your years or for your years of principal at Klein ISD, what initiatives or programs are you most proud of, and what challenges stand out?
Well, in terms of things that I was proud of, I was mainly proud just to be the leader of the school. Klein High School had an excellent reputation. Klein ISD did as well. But especially at Klein High, we called it the flagship. It was the number one, it was the first high school in the district, of course. And it had received a rating. I didn't know ratings were um, done the way that they are, but at the time, the ratings were always exemplary. So I was very proud of that. And I followed some very skilled principals. And so it was an honor for me to sit in that chair and guide a faculty that was unbelievably talented. And not just in academics, which we were. People would move into our attendance zone to go to Klein High. Your parents that were engineers, your parents that had high expectations for their children, college bound, knowing that they would get a strong academic foundation if they went to this particular school, they would move into the district in that attendance zone to go to Klein High School. And not just in academics, but in the not so much extracurricular, but music, theater art, athletics, dance, all of the extras that career and technology. Uh, every single program, every department was excellent. And so my job was to keep it that way. My job was to make sure that there was a conducive environment for the teachers to teach in and that they were able to do their job and then get out of the way and let them do it.
You
And
were the CEO of the school,
I was, yeah,
so you had to deal with anything and everything that came up as far as accountability issues. Um, the buck stopped with you pretty much.
it did. Yeah, I became the face of Klein High.
Yeah, it's great to see your former students come up to you and sing your praises. It's always nice to hear that when I'm around and to see them come up to you. They always have such fond memories of their time in high school with you. So
Well, that's really an honor to have that be that way. Yeah, so I'm very glad. But anyway, that was my job was to make sure that the expectations did not slip because the people who came before me did an excellent job of keeping them that way.
mhm.
Um, they were great principals, and so for me to come over from Kleb, which was the middle school that directly fed Klein High, and to get that opportunity to sit in that chair was the culmination of a career, in my opinion. And so I had to make sure it stayed that way. And actually, really, there are very few problems that I faced when I was there. Now, we did have our challenges from time to time, but for the most part, the teachers were excellent. They did their job. Um, our music departments, our theater arts, our career technology, everything was a number one. It was a plus.
That's awesome. So let's go on to some state level issues. I know you've kind of touched on them, so we don't have to go in too deep, but accountability ratings. Texas recently released A through F accountability grades for school districts again. Only about 10.4% of districts earned an A, while 16.6% received a D or an F. Critics argue the system unfairly penalizes districts serving high poverty students. Given your research on accountability systems and your book's thesis that high stakes testing can only set schools up for failure, how would you reform the state accountability system? What would you do different?
I'd get rid of it. I would get
There's,
rid of it.
I know there's a lot of movements to opt out of state testing too. Like there's, you can
Right.
do it.
Natalie, and this sounds like people think, oh my gosh, you're going to take accountability away from the schools? No, I'm going to give it back to the local districts, give it back to local control. They did it before, they can do it again. When the state gets involved, then it's going to muddy the waters. And that's exactly what has happened. The most, the worst thing that happened was to begin rating schools according to the outcomes on the standardized test that they took. When you did that, you created in the public's mind that there were these good schools, and then there were these not so good schools, and then there were these really bad schools over here. And that created a system whereby the public formed their opinions based upon the rating. And I have shown in my presentations that I do that nothing could be further from the truth. Now, are there schools that are more desirable for your children to go to than others because of crime, because of discipline? Yes, there are schools that are better run than others, okay? But that has to do with administration. That has to do with how well the district is supporting those administrators that are trying to keep their schools in line so that there's a good, conducive environment to teach in. Those principals that are not holding the line when it comes to discipline are jeopardizing the learning environment. Now, they could say, I'm not being supported. We try to do that, and we're not being supported from those that are above us when we try to discipline individuals. And yes, that is happening. Principals are getting the word. Don't penalize any more students of this particular ethnicity, whatever it happens to be. And so kids get sent to the office, they get sent back, and there's no penalty. Well, when that happens, you've lost it. You have lost the school when that happens. And unfortunately, that's happening in greater numbers. More and more schools we're finding are out of control when it comes to student behavior. The only way you can get that back is to begin giving consequences that are deserved according to the student handbook. Every school has a student handbook that has a code of conduct. If you follow that code of conduct and you give that student what they deserve according to their infraction, then how can anybody fault that?
That's a whole nother tangent. I mean, teachers aren't supported in the classroom because they have Billy that's acting out, flipping tables. You've got kids that can't learn because Billy's acting out, and they remove the kids that are quiet and let the other kid, Billy, who's the disruptor, stay in there mid-test. I hear this. This is going on at my school where my kid goes. It is insane the level of insanity that teachers have to put up with. Not only do they have to put up with that, then they also have to put up with their 504, their plans. Everybody has one. It's like you almost need like on top of their head, like the little placard that walks around with each kid. This kid, I'm supposed to put this kid in a safe space when they start having a tantrum. I'm supposed to not hug this kid or touch this kid. I'm not supposed to, like, all these rules, and it all comes down to the teachers at that level. And there's no accountability. When principals do try and discipline, they get told to back off, and parents get frustrated, and because things aren't getting handled, then they're overreacting and going to schools, which then makes the schools go on lockdown because there's bullies that aren't being dealt with. I mean, it's a cycle of chaos, and until somebody stops it.
Yeah. And what I would, for those superintendents and school board members who deny that that is happening, I would say that they are out of touch. They are very much out of touch with what is happening at their individual schools, and they need to get a grip on it.
if they would actually respond to emails that come in their inbox, that might be an actual start. I mean, just
Good
saying.
start. Yeah.
So let's go on to the next question. Rating components. The Texas system weights student achievement and school progress heavily. 70% of the overall grade comes from whichever, and these numbers may be off a little, so don't 100% quote me on this, but overall grade comes from whichever of these categories is higher, 30% from closing the gap. So the weighted grades, do you think those weights accurately reflect a school's success? What other factors besides those weighted grades should be considered?
Well, the accountability system already weighs different category. They differ. They rate the attendance rate of that particular school, of the kids, graduation rate for high schools. Um, so other things are considered, but when you begin putting so much emphasis on that state test, then you've changed the game of education, and that's why I advocate getting rid of it. It's not fair to the teachers. It's not fair to the students. We have deprived 2 or 3 generations worth of kids from the real knowledge that they could have received from a knowledgeable teacher, a very competent teacher, like we all had in school. Instead of being taught to the test, teaching to the test, then they would have been able to gain from the vast wealth of knowledge that the teachers have, and would have been able to receive a much better education. They're getting limited information now. Limited. They are limiting the information that the students can receive simply because of the importance put on the rating, which is based on the outcomes of the test.
And as Klein ISD was the darling, the creme de la creme in Texas. And the beauty of Klein is that they were the best, and that universities, when they were teaching teachers, would actually use Klein's curriculum as the example in the university of how to create curriculum, how to write, what to do, how to be better. And that's been lost. It's like everybody is outsourcing important aspects of your own organization and company, that you're allowing other people to write it. And the way I look at it, because I am a business owner and entrepreneur, it's your company. Like the elementary school is that principal's company, and then it feeds into the bigger corporation, which is where Jenny McGowan is the superintendent at Klein ISD. She is the CEO of the bigger organization. And you really, it takes away the ability to set you apart and thrive and do better and be different. And like you said, it strips the teacher's ability to train and teach and show and express. It's like you see those teachers of the year that dress up as Einstein, dress up as Amelia Earhart, or do different things and go above and beyond. It kind of strips away the passion. And that's why we have so many good teachers leaving, because everything is teach to the test.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure your kids get a good breakfast, make sure they do this. And there's all this pressure, not only on the kids, but on the teachers and the administration, and I'm all for accountability, but it doesn't just start. You can't hold kids accountable for a test when you're not even holding them accountable for homework, where they're getting those micro doses of accountability and failure. And then you're throwing a big test on them that their teacher's livelihood depends on. And then they fail. And then it's all that pressure comes on them when they haven't even had to deal with the micro failures, which failure is an important part of life and going through things. If you're not failing, you're not growing, you're not thriving. And that's really robbing our kids and hurting our teachers and our whole overall system. So I'd agree with you there. So let's go on. We're talking, this is kind of a good segue here. Teacher shortage legislation. So House Bill 2 in 2025 would prohibit uncertified teachers from teaching core classes, requiring certification by fall 2026 for K-5 math reading teachers, and by fall 2027 for others. It offers stipends of 10,000 for in-school training programs and 3,000 for university alternative programs to help teachers get certified. Supporters say it'll raise quality, while districts worry it could worsen staffing shortages. What is your view on this bill and in Texas's approach on addressing teacher shortages? Now, even if some of those facts and numbers aren't exact because it may have changed through the process of writing the bill and everything, what can we do to address teacher shortages at a state and a local level?
Another phenomenon is taking place in universities across the state, and that is their teacher education programs are dwindling because fewer and fewer students are going into the education field to begin with. And one of the reasons why there's fewer and fewer students going into the education field is because of the difficulty with being in a public school nowadays to teach. They're hearing the stories. They've got big brothers, big sisters. They've got friends that are already teachers. And they're saying, don't do it. Stay away. Run. Pick another subject. Pick another path of income to follow. So that what I would say to begin with, what we need to begin doing is we need to save the teaching profession, okay, by making it more suitable to go into schools and be a teacher. That's a tall order because of what has taken place over the last decade. And that is that the students have been allowed to pretty much run amok and run the show in terms of the environment in the school. And if you don't believe that, those people that are listening to this broadcast, you just need to talk to a teacher. Talk to any teacher in any school, and they will tell you what the difficulties are. So you've got students that are preparing to be teachers that are going into the profession, and those that are going into the profession are finding it more and more difficult to remain in the profession, and so they're getting out sooner. They're not.
So many are leaving.
They're,
That's another thing. Somebody, if you want to do a FOIA, here's a FOIA for your school district that you can do. And for those that don't know what a FOIA is, Freedom of Information Act. You can request information from your district. And one of those things that we could request that I'm thinking is we need to request the turnover. What is our retention rate? And what does that turnover look like? Where are they going? Where are they transferring to? Because we know so many teachers are leaving the district. We hear it all the time for our district. Good quality teachers are leaving. And it's really disappointing and sad to see
yeah,
the legacy that's being lost from their departures.
for sure. And if we've got teachers now that are in the profession that all they've known is the accountability system. When they were younger, they took the state test. That's all they know. So in order to get a good perspective on how far the profession has fallen, you need to talk to a veteran teacher that has been teaching for 30 years or more. Then you
Yeah,
can,
when you say the accountability system, it's misleading,
it
right?
is. Mhm.
It's so misleading, and that's how they package and that's how they market and they frame things, is so that it sounds good. No child left behind. Yes, let's lift them all up. Let's bring everybody. Realistically, we can't without making other people suffer as well. Like, we want to lift the gifted up, we want to lift the regular students up, and we want to lift those that have learning disabilities or may not be on point. We want to build everybody up at their own pace. Not everybody's an Einstein, but it's named accountability. So when you say accountability system, like, yeah, bring back accountability, but it's like, no, that's not what's happening.
They've stolen the language. When I say they, those who control the agenda. Okay, we have to
And this
admit
is national. This
national.
isn't just Klein. This is
No,
national down to the state and our state government. Now, you've testified in front of the state government a number of times. You're very involved with the curriculum and with what's going on and everything with that, even on the private vouchers we're going to get to. So this is not just a Klein ISD issue, it's an overall issue. But there are things that you can do within your district to make it better and improve. So let's go on. Were you finished with that one? save the teacher profession, the
Well,
runway, like
yeah.
accountability system?
Um, yeah, let's go on because we need to bring the profession back. And when they say uncertified teachers, the state caused this to happen. The state brought this on because they developed this knowing that there were going to be teacher shortages because of the way schools were being run due to their policies that you know, that they have passed. They developed this program called District of Innovation, and they sold it to the districts from the standpoint of, okay, you're going to be able to choose your own calendar. You're going to be able to determine when you start school and when you end school, as long as you get in the required number of days. I think it's at 185 now, if I'm not, or 175, excuse me, and teachers have to teach 100, have to work 185. But the District of Innovation required and said that you don't have to have a teaching certificate to teach. If you have a certain number of hours in the field from college, so let's just say, for example, 18 in math, you're capable of teaching, you can qualify to teach math. Now, that was, and they did this from the standpoint of your vocational teachers that oftentimes had great experience in that particular vocation, say ag or a technology field, and you weren't a certified teacher, but you could go ahead and teach in that field. Well, what that enabled districts to do is to hire some of these difficult subject areas and enable them to be able to have teachers. But unfortunately, the District of Innovation also says you don't have to have a teaching certificate to teach in this particular area. If you just have a certain number of hours, you can go ahead and continue to teach. Well, it also says that every teacher is now an at-will employee. They only have a contract for 1 year. And if they don't measure up, hit the road. They don't have to give due process like they used to give. And this is horrible for the profession. You have no security when it comes to that. So some parents will say, that's great. I believe in that. But it's not good for the profession.
As an entrepreneur, I'm like, well, that's like everybody else. It's the same. You don't have the unions bogging down
Right.
and keeping bad teachers, which was a lot of the issue too. There were teachers we couldn't get rid of because of the union.
Yeah.
But
So I'm not going to spend too much time on that.
yeah, yeah.
But that was it is an issue. Even so, they're going to have to repeal those laws. Certificate, which I'm in favor of. I'm in favor of a teacher having to have a certificate. It raises the profession. We are a profession. We can't, not just anybody can come in and teach, and we've seen that to be true. There are some that have the certification that can't teach, but for the most part, the people that are teaching need to have the credentials that says they have spent the time in the coursework that enables them to be able to be an expert in that field to be able to teach. Now, are they going to be able to teach right off the bat? Some can, some can't. It's a craft that has to be honed over the years.
So let's go into private school vouchers. Senate Bill 2 passed in April 2025 will launch a $1 billion education savings account program in 26-27 that allows family to use about 85% of their per pupil school funding for private school tuition and related expenses. Critics worry vouchers siphon funds from public schools and favor wealthier families because up to 20% of the funds can go to households making more than 160,000. How do you think vouchers will affect public school districts like Klein ISD, and what accountability should accompany state funded private education? I like that. What accountability? Here we go back to the purse strings, right? Everything is purse string driven. He who controls the dollars is king.
Okay. The voucher program came about because the state wants to control every child's education. That's my firm belief. And I think that is being borne out in other states that have taken on vouchers before Texas, is that A few years can go by and they won't be required to do what every public school does. But in the end, they are going to be required because they have taken the state money. Parents think that the tax money belongs to them, but the state believes that it belongs to them. The state believes it's their money. All right. That's tax money that belongs in the state coffers. And if they are allowing state tax money to be used in a certain area, they're going to require accountability. There's that word again. But they're going to require the private schools to do what the public schools do.
So let's talk a little bit about that, like services and programs. So a public school provides bus services, meal services, speech, like all
All
these
programs.
extracurricular activities. So that's still required that the school has to provide this. So they have to make lunches for 100% of their students showing up, even though the private schools don't. They don't have to provide bus service. They don't have to provide the 504 and IEP plans. They don't have to do any of that.
Right. Yeah. But the main thing is that the curriculum. The private school is going to be following the state curriculum, which is Common Core. Okay, you'll never get a politician to admit that because they have rules that say we don't teach Common Core, but we do. It's called College and Career Ready Standards. That's Common Core.
If you actually, and I challenge you as a parent to go in and look at your child's curriculum, look at their math, look at their reading, read the questions that they're answering in their story problems. Like, get into the paragraphs that they're having to read to summarize. Like, there's so many things in there that call to question required reading at the high school level and junior high level for these gifted and talented kids. There's some questionable things that are in there, and I'm not saying that Klein still has, but you will see books that'll slip in, and how they slip in. And this is something that we learned because this is part of what I spoke on in the beginning. It's not to book burn, but it's to age appropriate books, right? So what do those age appropriate books look like? Well, if a school district couldn't buy them, they could be gifted them from an organization, and an organization would gift lots of books to the libraries to get these particular books into the school. So there's a lot of things that there may be laws on, but there's always workarounds that people will find. And you as the parent, bottom line, you are responsible for your kid, and you have to make sure that what's going into their brain is appropriate for what you want them to learn. Not that a teacher is out there doing something intentionally. However, the curriculum that's written may not be aligned with your goals and values. So that's one of those things that you definitely need to take an active role as a parent and do, and read their books, like log into the curriculum. I think it's so hard these days as an active parent of a little one. Where do I even log in? I've got 20 logins for one kid to go to different things. And I can't even keep up with my own logins. Then you add my little one in. And how do I see this curriculum? How do I go and see what he's being taught? And it's one of those things that you have to do it on day one, like log in and get all of that set up as we start back to school. It's going to be one of those important things because you really have no idea where things are slipping in. And sometimes you've got to be the voice for your child because they don't know what they don't know.
Very true. Okay, where were we?
So we were talking about the state funded versus the vouchers.
So with the vouchers, there's only, from what I understand, the first year that they're eligible to receive a voucher, there's only going to be 100,000 that are given out, 100,000 vouchers. And that's going to be decided by the comptroller. If you've been paying attention to Texas politics here lately, there's a race for comptroller that's going to be coming forward in November because the comptroller has stepped down and gone in a different direction, chosen to become something different in politics. And there's going to be a new comptroller, and the comptroller is going to be in charge of the money, charge of the voucher money. All right, so how that's going to work, I can't answer, but not everybody is going to be eligible to get a voucher if you want it. When I'm hearing only 100,000, the money is only available to give out 100,000 vouchers. So in the state of Texas, that's not a high percentage that are going to be eligible to begin with. But that number will go up as the years go by. The goal, Natalie, the goal is to privatize education. That what we see in HISD right now, Houston Independent School District, is the goal that they want to see in every school district. Are we about to run out of time?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I put a time in. My concern is if you look at HISD and what's going on, that's why I made that face. It's what's going on in HISD is horrible. Like there's a lot of things going amok. They're always in the news, which it's just, even as the state's running it and has taken it over, it's not in a good position or a good spot. And I understand transition, but it's insane what's going on.
One of the ways that the state can privatize a school district is by taking over their board of trustees. So in other words, the people that are on the board that have been elected are done away with or made to take a back seat. And a new board is come forward that's called a board of managers. And the board of managers, each individual manager is appointed by the commissioner. Our commissioner in Texas is Mike Morath. So, yeah, the commissioner determines who is going to be on the board of managers. And so those managers are not accountable, or that superintendent is not accountable because he's appointed as well. They're not accountable to the public. They're accountable to the commissioner. And so
And I think
if they
you're
are,
hitting on something very, very important here. So like with the school board and the board of what was it called?
trustee, the board of
No,
managers.
board of managers. So go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so the board of managers is appointed by the commissioner, and they are accountable to him. So in other words, the people in the district still pay taxes, right? But they don't have any representation through those taxes with their school board member. So what do we call that?
Representation or
Call that.
taxation without representation.
Thank you. Thank you. See, you paid attention in history class. Taxation without representation, fundamental to our republic. And we always hear democracy, but fundamental to our republic, because in a republic, you have a representative that represents you as a constituent that has paid taxes and expect a certain outcome from the person that you chose to elect. And you want that individual to represent you, not the state. And we want our board of trustees at the local level to represent us, the taxpayer, not the superintendent. Fundamental. That is fundamental. They are responsible to the constituents that elected them. Fundamental to our republic. And when a certain administration is out of line, then the only people that can bring that administration back into line is the board of trustees. That's how it works. So at the state level, when you have a board of managers, you've lost your representation. And at the local level, when you have a school board that's not paying attention to their constituents, then you've lost your representation too.
Which is, I feel, where we're at now. And we'll kind of go into that a little bit. It is so important that we have board members step up to run, that we have people step up to run as a trustee. This is something that's very much needed to shine light and hold the district accountable, like real accountability, not just a fluff accountability, but accountable for what's going on in the schools. I can sit here and list about 10 things that I've heard that are very appalling, that Klein ISD is very good at sweeping under the rug and not ever dealing with the issues and shielding themselves from any kind of conversations, including the elected officials. And until you have a problem in the school, until it's your child, you don't even realize what's going on because you're going through your busy daily life. So I appreciate you guys making it this far through this Zoom, but it's very important that you stay in tune and that you run. If it's placed on your heart and you have a calling to run, then run. That's why I ran last year. I was on the fence. I didn't want to run, and I was literally in church, and the preacher looks over to my direction and he says, "And run for school board." And I knew right then I was running. There was no choice. Um, but we need strong leaders. We need people to step up who aren't afraid to ask questions, who aren't afraid to be a backbone for the kids and the teachers that are on the ground level. And it is very, very important that we do this and we do it now, because here's a pivotal time that we can make a change. We've got some great candidates, or we already have a great representative in there that's actually responding to emails. Right now, if you email the school board, any of them, they won't respond. They run with fear and they don't discuss hard issues. And it's really concerning. I may not be the most polished, but I have no problem having tough conversations, holding people accountable, including myself, on things that need to happen within the schools and that need to happen at the district level. And that's what's not happening right now. And that's why things are running amok. And we'll get into some more. Let's get into Klein. Let's go into what's happening with things. And I know we're going to go over an hour, which is, I think, okay. If we have to put this into two parts, we will. I hope people will listen through, because it is important for your children. Put us on your drive in, however you need to do. So, informal resolution. Klein ISD, and this is where we're having a lot of issues. The grievance policies encourage parents and students to first discuss issues informally with the campus principal or administrator. And the district notes that almost all matters are resolved at this level. But based on your experience, Dr. Huff, as a principal, why is this informal step important, and how can administrators foster trust so that complaints are resolved early?
There's going to be complaints. There's going to be things that parents don't agree with, the decisions
Always.
that are made by the school. It's important that when a parent feels grieved with the grievance process, um, that they first go through the school level. Now, if it's a school issue, if it deals with a matter of discipline that the child got, then chances are it can be resolved at the local level. And that is up to the leadership that you have at that individual school to get that issue resolved before it goes any further. And that doesn't mean giving the parent what they want every time. That can't happen. Um, if we're going to have discipline, if we're going to have order in the classroom and there are infractions that are committed, then they need to get what they deserve, which is a consequence given in the code of conduct. As long as you're in the code of conduct that's outlined in every student handbook, then you're on good footing, and a parent should support that. But if you're dealing with a district issue that a parent feels grieved about and has not gotten the support or the decision at a higher level, not just an individual school, not just but a district policy that they feel is there that is not right, or that they feel has not acted in their child's best interest, then it's up to them, if they want to, if they feel so led, to enter into the grievance process. And the grievance has three levels to it. And at the first level, it should be at the school level and handled in that regard. At the second and third level, second level would be an administrator at the district level. The third level would be in each along the way, the principal and the district representative has an opportunity to change that decision that was made. If the parent still feels grieved, then they can go to the level 3. And this is when they should have an independent hearing officer that hears the complaint, sees what the policy is, sees how it was handled, and then goes and makes a decision according to what they feel needs to be done.
So this is known as for students and parents as the F&G policy, or GF for public complaints. Like once it's getting to that level 2 and level 3, right?
Right.
And it does require specific forms, and it does have to be filed and done in a timely time frame. A lot of parents don't even realize that. They're just trying to process what's going on. They're going through their daily life. Their child's being bullied. They have different things, and they're expecting it to get handled. They have to be able to move quickly and not sit on it too long and wait for the second or third incident to happen, because they will lose that opportunity to even file a complaint, which is absolutely insane, because some parents are not as reactory. They let things work themselves out, as most parents do. Like, okay, you're having a problem with Billy at school. Work it out, figure it out. Be, like, what's your solutions? What can you do different? Maybe don't sit with him at the table. Maybe do this. You want your child to be able to have these coping skills to be able to deal and manage in life. But according to the grievance process, which they change the rules on this all the time at the school board meetings, and don't even explain to the parents what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it. There's zero discussion. And they're coming in at the school board meetings and altering the rules mid-game, mid-process, and it's absolutely insane. From your perspective, does the current process adequately protect complainants' rights while ensuring complaints are resolved efficiently?
That's a difficult question to answer because I'm not on the ground level dealing with that currently. Okay, nor am I familiar enough with the whole grievance process to begin with, because I didn't operate with that type of policy in place when I was working. But I do know that there have been complaints in Klein because the grievance officer that is supposed to be independent is actually an ex-employee of the district. And with that single item, him or her being an ex-employee that is currently being paid to be a grievance officer, independent, supposedly, then the tables are skewed in the district's favor already before the complaint has even been heard. So, in order to be transparent and to be fair, to be equitable for all concerned, then that hearing officer needs to be independent of the district, in my opinion. He can't be a friend of anybody in the district. He has to be truly independent. And that is a complaint that I have heard is happening in Klein.
Former employees, lots of Willis employees, Willis staff, which is pretty interesting because there's some people that moved from Klein ISD out to Willis. It isn't like they're trying to hear and find resolution. It's like they're trying to be dismissive and not address the concerns and the issues. They're just taking it at ground level, whatever the decision was, which is really doing a disservice to the parents and the teachers, because nobody wants to hear anything and nobody really wants to deal with the tough issues. There's no accountability. There's no decisive action. There's no discipline. It seems that the discipline is going to the people who actually have the concerns and the grievances. They're the ones that are punished in their different ways. We've heard of a lot of retaliation within Klein. I heard one mother told me that something that happened to her child, which was very egregious. I've spoken about it before. They actually called her district and tried to intimidate her at her job, which is insane why a district would start putting pressure because of what's coming out. And it really is very disheartening that they don't care enough about the kids and the teachers on that ground level to really delve in and see where they can improve and see what they can do differently, or see how they can help if they could or couldn't. It's just a simple flip of the wrist and like, be gone. Like, we're not concerned. So you kind of hit on the next one, which is hearing officers. What are the benefits and drawbacks of using an independent hearing officer versus having trustees hear grievances directly? And how might this influence perception of fairness? Because once it reaches level 3, isn't it level 3 where the trustees get to vote on the issue?
Mm-hmm.
But so
Actually,
somebody,
beyond the next level, beyond level 3.
okay.
Yeah.
And then, so it's the next level after. If they don't agree with what the hearing officer said, the third party independent hearing
Mm-hmm.
officer stated, then they can go to the trustee And what do they get? 1 minute, 2 minutes to actually discuss, and that's
I
at a
don't,
board meeting?
I, no, I don't believe, if you have a hearing in front of the board, you have the opportunity to present evidence.
I
So,
think I'm going to get Justin on to kind of talk about the grievance process a little bit more to understand how that works. But
but they
then
passed a rule, they passed a new policy in Klein that if the board chooses not to hear it, they don't have to hear it. So that's something that Justin could answer as well.
you mean if they like it, so here you are, the CEO, and you've got your board of directors, your trustees, and you've got your clients complaining. Nobody has to hear it. So they've basically, the superintendent has been removed. The trustees have removed her from accountability. So she's not complicit in anything that's going on within the district. So basically she can wash her hands and say, "Oh, I don't know what's going on."
I don't understand that. That's what I hear they have done as well. Yeah. So our board is acting in my opinion, in a rogue manner. They are not being answerable to the public that elected them. And that is their first priority. They have to maintain a a strong, stable, desirable district for parents to send their children to. And if they drop the ball on that, forget it. Klein's finished. And so they have to be responsible. They have to look at each case and they have to determine if they have made an incorrect decision, they need to reverse it. They need to reverse that decision. In my opinion, taking the superintendent out of the appeal process, in other words, not responsible, that's 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 tantamount to negligence, in my opinion.
Can you imagine a CEO just going in one day and saying, "I don't want to know any of the problems, y'all, middle management, you just figure it out"?
No, you can't. No,
That to me is absolutely insane, and that's what they've done, and that's why you have so many frustrated parents and teachers going up to the lawsuit aspect and reaching out to escalate even beyond the district. And our legal fees, if you look at our legal fees, were
mm,
50,000 what the previous year, and then 500,000 up from January to June of last year. So there's something going on. Either they're funneling money through Spalding, and I don't know. I don't have proof. So I'm just saying something is going on. And the way I know this is not because they've come out and told us, it's because of the FOIAs, the Freedom of Information Acts, which if you can go in and request information like I've done on the grievance process to kind of even just see where we're at, how many went Klein's rule, Klein's favor. If you ever go to a school board meeting, you can now, they're streaming them, but they're very skewed in the way that they're set up. They have the public speaking first, and that starts at 6, and then that goes probably till about 6:15 or so. And everybody gets, I think, 2 minutes to speak. And then after that 2 minute, then they close. They go to a recess, they go behind closed doors to talk or do whatever it is they do. And then they come back and actually do the awards and do everything fun with the parents and everyone else. So the parents who are there for the good things that are going on in the district, they don't ever hear what's going on the other side. They create that separation so they don't have to answer questions or don't seed anything that may create havoc down the road because they don't want to have to answer. And so when you individually have a problem, it's just you that they're dealing with, and nobody else thinks it's going to happen to them. And it really is a huge problem. And it's all scripted when they get up there for the school board. You see the white binder, everything is already written out for everybody. It's already prepared for the staff of Klein that they all go through from the district level. And it's just really disheartening that things have gone the way that they've gone, because I've never seen anything. The votes from the trustees are all the same. I think Denise was the first one. Denise Morrison is the first one to cast a descending vote, or wasn't the same as everybody else. And it really begs to differ. Where are they discussing things, and how is this happening? There's so many things that need to happen that aren't happening in public view. And they will
Right.
say that they're within laws and they're within, and it's Jenny making calls to everybody and telling everybody how, or her thoughts or her plan, which is fine because she's the CEO, but she's exempt. She's basically had all kind of accountability removed from her. And people need to see what's going on before something happens to their kid. And we really need to vote in change into the school district so that we can start being the change that we wish to see. Because it's all fine and dandy until it's your kid.
Another point that needs to be brought up that is very, I think, very disturbing to anybody that goes before the board to voice an opinion or a complaint is that the board tells them that they don't have the ability, the legal ability to answer back. They
To
can't,
respond.
they cannot respond. Now, to me, I don't know where that's coming from because at the state level, they can respond as they see fit. If when I go to give a presentation to the Education Committee of the House at the state capitol in Austin, after I give that presentation, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, any number of the House committee members can ask me a question and ask for an amplification of what I just talked about. Give me examples, Dr. Huff. Let me know if this pertains to that. And what do you mean by whatever? Those kind of questions are important. And so for a local school board to say, well, we cannot answer any of your complaints, we cannot speak to it. They look at you like nothing. Like they just look beyond you. They can't say anything. That is the most ridiculous rule or policy I've ever heard.
I think
Where is the representation on that?
I think they can ask questions. I think they don't.
They
And
choose
I'll
not to.
I'll do another series with Justin. He knows a lot more on this. They choose not to because they already know how they're going to vote. They already know everything from the cliff notes that they got from Jenny.
Mhm.
And or it's disheartening and sad because as the CEO of a company, you're supposed to care about all your employees and all the way down to your children, and that's not what's happening. A very good face is put on and rah rah like a cheerleader, but behind the scenes, when you pull the curtain back, there's a lot of teachers that don't feel heard, a lot of parents that are very upset. And it's not just people who are fighting or are just crazy. Hold on one second. It's not just people who are crazy because of things that are happening to their kid because it's their kid. They have very valid concerns and issues that nobody is addressing. And it's that whole, oh, we did this. And I can bring up 3 or 4 different things from the locker room where the adult broke into the locker room and beat up the kid. There were like 3 or 4 that jumped this kid from the parents' perspective, and the child was beat up. The phones were confiscated, videos were deleted, parent wasn't allowed to be called. I don't care if this kid stole a cell phone. I don't care what happened. The adults in the situation did not handle this right, and that's the coaches. They did not handle the situation right. The parents weren't notified. They're and for the parent to have these concerns and issues and get no response from anybody, it's really unsettling. Then when you have the sex trafficking case, I know people are like, well, why are we still talking about the sex trafficking case? um, I'm sorry, if my child was sex trafficked, I would be screaming from the top of the roof what happened. And my daughter what did want to take cosmetology, and thank goodness she didn't. She went to a different school. However, the whistleblower teacher was fired.
Well,
Whistleblower teacher was fired. Yeah.
she resigned.
Dark.
To be accurate, she resigned, but
So
under
she resigned probably under distress. And the teacher who was accused of sex trafficking was allowed to stay in for another year.
another year and 2 months.
And Klein will say, well, Harris County was performing an investigation and we let them perform their investigation. If that were my school, if I was the CEO of the company, I would be calling Harris County every week. What's going on? What's the update? I've got her in my school. If she's a child predator, I want to know. I want to get her out. How do I protect kids? What's my legal ramifications? What do I need to do? Can I put her on paid leave? Which is absolutely what I would have done if there was an investigation going on.
Natalie, they didn't need to ask permission from the Harris County Sheriff's Department to do any of that. They,
Exactly.
they could have put Miss Grigsby on leave and done their own investigation, which they did not do. Here's the rub on the sex trafficking case. Granted, I haven't heard all the details, but I've heard enough to be able to form an opinion. And this is what parents are forming throughout the district. They're forming their own opinion on did the district act correctly in this particular incident. The HR department in Klein had been putting teachers on leave periodically for a number of years. And this is something that I think Klein has overstepped their bounds on. Typically, it's the principal that should put a teacher on leave, but somehow that was flipped at some point in time. I don't know if it was under Dr. Champion, Dr. Kane, or if it was under Dr. McGowan. But in any event, the principal is the person that should put teachers on leave. The teacher hires, and the teacher can put different individuals on leave, of course, with the knowledge of the superintendent. And this is something that I had to do. So for an HR director to come into a school, walk into a classroom, escort that teacher out, and put them on leave is unheard of. That's overstepping the boundary lines of that director, of that person. That's not in their job description, unless that job description has been changed, of which, in my opinion, that's incorrect. That's not how it should operate. Now, the Klein HR director had been putting teachers on leave periodically for complaints from parents that did not rise to the occasion of trafficking students at all. So here we have a teacher, you have a credible teacher coming forward and making an accusation against another teacher because her own daughter was involved. She had firsthand knowledge. Now, what does the Klein administration do? They defer to the police department in Klein, who then calls the Harris County Sheriff's Office, and they get the word that Miss Grigsby is not under suspicion. Okay, but you just had a whistleblower tell you. You just had a whistleblower who was a teacher in the school saying that her daughter was in danger of being trafficked, had called her from a hotel room. And you're not going to put that teacher on leave and conduct your own investigation in order to protect all students at Klein Cain High School? No, that is. So, in my opinion, this is Pat Huff talking, okay? Because the school board did not hold Dr. McGowan accountable for that, they all need to go, with the exception of Denise Morrison. And if I were the voters in Klein, I would make sure that my vote was being cast for not an incumbent, but someone who was running against an incumbent. It is inexcusable, in my opinion, that this happened. And no one has been held accountable yet in Klein for what happened. No one has had the finger pointed at them and said, this happened because of your own negligence. That has not happened to any employee that I know of. Okay, that's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah. So my point is there's a lot of things going on within the district that are huge instances, huge issues, not just small scuffles, not just small things that are not being dealt with. So we really need strong candidates to run. So I think why the board is so important, you kind of covered on that: taxation without representation, if it goes the other way, but we're hitting on it now. The board is important because we help hold people accountable and we set the tone and the mood for the whole district if the CEO of the district isn't doing that, and that's the superintendent. So there's certain things that need to happen, and there's questions that need to be asked, and that's not happening. So if you guys have a question, a story, or a thought, we want to hear from you. We want you to be the change for the district. So if you're sitting on the sideline and you've got that itch and that call, please reach out to us. Run for school board. You can reach out to myself. You'll see this through my Facebook post, or on YouTube, you can reach out to me. Pat, did you have an email that somebody could reach out to?
Sure. My email is aphuff, Huff, 51, the number 51, at gmail.com. aphuff51 at gmail.com.
Any final thoughts?
Well, we have work to do. Our schools are not in good shape. They're not being run from the standpoint of providing a good environment for learning. The state is out of control when it comes to managing public education. They're abdicating that responsibility now through the voucher system. They broke it. Let me just say this, Natalie. The state education committee in both the House and the Senate is broken. They answer to the governor. They answer to the special interest. The system is broken. And my contention is that they've broken it on purpose. I was told back in 2015 from a state representative that they're moving to privatize public education. And this is exactly what's happening. So everything needs to be changed. We need to have a commissioner that is elected, not appointed, that is responsible and accountable to the public who elected him, not to the governor. We need to have responsible representatives and senators that are going to uphold the teaching profession. We need to have a governor that's going to support public education, not break it and then try to fix it through the voucher system. To say, look what I'm doing. I am helping those parents out because of our schools that are broken. Well, who broke them? Who broke the public schools? The government did. And you could say, well, they have these rules in place that say we can't teach Common Core. But there's no teeth point up to that. Common Core is the standards that are being used, and we're denying that. So my point, Natalie, is that we have a lot of work to do. Our schools are broken. Our teaching profession is not being supported and is being broken down systematically until the answer is going to be privatize everything.
What's the motivate? I know that what you said is kind of a lot for somebody to take in, but what is the motivation of privatizing education?
Controlling everything that the student learns. So therefore, everything that the student won't learn, that possibly they could learn if we had an open education system, a true system that educated in the manner that we used to teach. We used to have the student accountable. Now we have the school accountable. It has made all the difference in the world by doing that.
Is there money tied in? Because I always say my thought is
Of course, it's money.
always follow the money. So
Yeah.
who gets like where's the money aspect of it?
Look at the testing corporations. Look at all the support systems that are in place because we are having a standardized test that all of the students have to take. Look at the training that has to be done at the 20 regional service centers that we have across the state. Look at the money that's being used. You know, you want to solve our public education funding problems, get rid of the accountability system. And there'll be plenty of money left over to handle whatever problem we have. And we're going to have to work with the colleges to revamp their education programs. We're going to have to make the teaching profession attractive to go into now, rather than something that you want to avoid. So there's a lot of work to be done. And if you look at everything, every single thing that the parents are complaining about, They have been, okay, if you take the books in the library, the trafficking of the children, the poor curriculum, look at all the different aspects of what the parents are complaining about. They have been allowed to exist within the public education system by the government. Is government the answer? I don't know what else to turn to other than our representatives. Get rid of them if they're not doing their job, and let
Yeah.
new representatives. It's a tall task. It is a very tall task. Um,
Gosh, you make it sound so peaceful. Everybody wants to run now, Pat.
yeah, yeah. Everybody wants no. Really difficult to find people to run.
Yeah, it's not that bad when you run. You just got to have a little bit of thick skin and just know that you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea.
That's right. Yeah,
But if you run on principles and morals and values, you don't have anything to worry about because you're running based on principles, morals, and values. So you don't have to worry about anything else. So,
yeah. We have, and I'll say another word about Klein. Klein. When I worked in Klein, it was a wonderful district. I'm never more proud of the fact that I worked in Klein ISD and was the principal of Kleb Intermediate and Klein High School. Two exemplary schools that I had the privilege of being the head of. We've got to get it to that again. We can't obfuscate information. We have to be transparent. We have to work with parents. We can't say we're not doing something when we are. We have to come forward and be accountable to the taxpayers and those parents who have their kids, their most valuable possession, enrolled in a Klein public school. We've got to be accountable to them if we're going to be accountable to anybody. So, like I said, we got to get back to running the schools by the student code of conduct. And we need to be transparent. We need to work with parents, not try to hold information from them. And we need to create an environment for the teachers to work in that is not toxic, that is suitable for learning, where the teacher is supported and the teacher can teach the curriculum to the best of their ability. That's where we need to go.
thank you, Dr. Huff. Give me your email again.
aphuff51@gmail.com.
Love to have you run for school board. You'll have people support you. We will get things going. If you have any questions, stories, or thoughts that you want to share, feel free to reach out to me, nataliepilkington@gmail.com. That's Natalie, Natalie, P as in Paul, ILKINTON @gmail.com. We'd love to have you, love to meet you, and love to get things going in the right direction with Klein ISD. Thank you guys. Thank you, Doctor.
Absolutely. My pleasure.